webinar 33, after sales service. I can't believe that we've done so many of these together now, but months just seem to roll into one after the other. Today, again, as all of them, but a particularly important topic, as you will discover when we go through the discussion. So I hope you enjoy this month's webinar. We'll be talking about the importance of after sales service and when the foundations are laid for the after sales service, because it's not after the sale, as you will discover, but I won't steal from Keith's thunder. Today we have the illustrious panel. Stuart Ford is joining us from, are you upstate New York or downstate where are you today, Stuart?
We're in Connecticut at the home base for a few days.
In Connecticut. So yes, bringing with us a lot of knowledge and experience, and you'll, in the course of this webinar, you'll discover that they have some advantages in respect to after sales services attributable to Part 139 funding and the Federal Aviation Authority. Probably none of you in the world will be familiar with that. We can have a few. Perhaps I'll ask Stuart just to explain what goes on there after, in the Q&A session at the end. The Q&A session, as usual, please post any questions you've got using the caption on the screen, and then we will endeavour to answer as many as we can live after the webinar, and those that we don't have time to answer, we will answer either in the next webinar or directly online to you. Also introduce to you Tony Smith, inventor of the PAPI, winner of the gold medal. I mean, his achievements are too many to list. I could fill up the whole webinar, but thank you so much for joining us again, Tony. And of course, the one and only Keith Costall, the font of all knowledge and understanding when it comes to airfield lighting. And he's been busy on the trail, still vigorously training people all over the world, and sharing his knowledge and experience and helping aviation tremendously. So, and today he's going to be helping us by talking about the importance, what is after sales service, how important it is, and how to make it work properly. So without any further ado, Keith.
Yeah, thank you very much, Robert, for the intro. And, obviously again to our team. And, I think when you look at the team and we look at all our grey hairs, there is quite a lot of years of understanding and knowledge there, and with particular emphasis on different parts of our airfield ground lighting or aeronautical ground lighting world. But service, after sales service. What is after sales service? After sales service is the follow-up support and the resources that it needs to be provided to the customer after they have purchased the product. Now, when we say after, then the planning for that actually starts earlier than that, as Robert just said. But the key issue is, though, we want to make sure that in an after-sales service, then the customer for the airport understands that the airport itself truly appreciates and understands that the supplier, the OEMs, whatever they are supplying, really value them, and the value, and it's not just their money, not just their wallet, as it says there. Whoops, excuse me. Let me. So, quality after sales activities can basically be in several ways. Quickly answering questions for when a customer calls ad hoc for an ad hoc reason, or you set up an ongoing and effective service support function, etc. And but the key issue is that we want to ensure, all of us want to ensure that the airport, the customer itself, themselves value the support they're giving and can accept the support in a realistic and in an effective way. We need to keep customers happy, all of us, in any walk of life, get them coming back for more, and the best thing is for them to sing your praises, because the reality is then, as we will see, probably the best customer you'll ever have is the existing one you have, providing you support that customer. So why and how? Well, we need to enhance those customer satisfaction. What it is also, we need to deepen and consolidate the brand in loyalty elements, because, as I said, customers keep coming back if they are happy with both the product and the service the after sales service they receive, and increasing that customer retention, repeat sales, etc. Hopefully high value sales, but probably the best marketing we're ever going to get is boosting by word of mouth, sales by word of mouth referrals. But it's interesting, there's some factors, and there are some facts. Did you know that investing 5% of your time or your revenue into customer retention can boost profits of your company by a minimum of 25%? That is across the industrial sector. It is a fact. And just remember, when you're capturing new opportunities, it's exceedingly important, but it's also totally crucial to continue supporting your existing customers. And according to the various marketing reviews that occur across the industrial sectors, the probability of selling equipment to an existing customer is 60 to 70% success rate, whereby if you've got to go to a new customer, that is, get the key of the door, then it can be as low as 5 to 20%. So you can imagine how much effort, time and money goes into pioneering new customers. Look after your existing customer. That's a fact. So where do we start? Well, as Robert just indicated there, where do we start? We start by looking right at the consultation, the auditing, the design phase, because in that part of the consideration, when we're looking at upgrading a runway, for example, then we need to be saying, well, we need to be involved at that stage. How are we going to select, install, operate, maintain that equipment? And that is what we're going to talk about today. So ultimately, it's going to be the operational compliance, the maintenance, the support elements with the equipment, a suitable supplier of that equipment, reputable supplier of that equipment, and the contractor who actually is going to physically install, set it to work, hand it over for a maintenance team to maintain. So that is what we start very, very early when we're thinking about after-sales service. So there is a definite requirement for considering after-sales early. We've had a lot of discussion over the period of time is how often do projects actually go ahead on an airport where the project team never ever involve talking and including the maintenance people. So a project is executed, completed, accepted, and handed over to maintenance. Then the poor old maintenance guys then have to say, what? So there is a definite gap there in the between project and maintenance, and that gap needs to be overlapped. And when it's overlapped, then we get a more effective operational system. If we do not overlap, that is where the maintenance start to need additional service support. So let's start with maintenance management. Let's start in AGL. Where do we actually start? Well, let's have a look at the 4 elements associated with an AGL installation on an airfield, whether it's a runway, taxiway, or whatever. First of all, is the equipment that you have installed, as I've just mentioned. It's been installed by a project, etc. Then it's handed over to maintenance. So yes, hopefully it's installed correctly and it's been set to work correctly, and suitable in familiarization for the maintenance persons has taken place. But to be able to maintain, we need tool and equipments. And with tool and equipments, what tools and equipment? How effective are those tools and equipment? Are they accurate? Are they when you use them, can you repeatedly use them, etc.? Do you have spares, or that side of tools and tech equipment? But then to do that, we need processes, procedures, etc., documentation, technical documentation, technical manuals to enable us to do that. And ultimately, it's us as people, as the technicians on the ground that have to do the work, the personnel. And do we have familiar training? Do we have refresher training with the different new and different technologies that get introduced on a project? And we know that in a traditional AGL 6.6 AGL system, but it's not just being an electrical person who understands electrical engineering, and we've all been brought up on constant voltage electrical engineering. With an AGL system, it's constant current electrical engineering, and there's some fundamental differences, like high voltage, or say higher than 1000 volts. And that in itself creates some issues. So people and our competency and our demonstration and justification of our competency is also in the factor. So they're the 4 elements that we're looking at. So service covers those 4 principal elements, but the reality is that the overall target is that we can continue to achieve and maintain operational compliance, and we are competent to achieve that. But that's not just the same for all over the world. We are different issues to consider when we're looking at service, and we're looking at we've got to consider the geographical location. Is it in where we have low temperatures in a winter, or are we looking at high temperatures in desert scenarios? So the geographical location and those environmental issues is a factor. The time zone, the changes between we're based, I'm based here in the United Kingdom, but if I go to Asia Pacific, into the Pacific region, 11 hours and 12 hours and 13 hours different depending on the time of year. So there's a consideration that we have to put into the equation of how we provide a service to an airport. The logistics of getting equipment from A to B over those distances by air, is it by air mail, sea mail, you name it, and that's just the risk. That doesn't include the response times, and do we have the technical knowledge? So there's a few things that we have to take into account when we're looking at service. So I would say to you that this is another fact. So to retain loyalty by a customer, to get the customer satisfaction, the interesting thing is that Another fact that comes out of this market consideration and research is that 5%, investing for the 5% of customer retention will boost your profit as an OEM by 25% or thereabouts. Absolutely unbelievable, you know, when you're looking at those figures. And at the end of the day, we all need a salary, and so the company needs to make money, you know. So this is a, you know, a real fact. But what are your thoughts? So let's ask you, what are your thoughts about the service support that you are receiving? Now, we're very interested to hear about that. So you can ask the questions and send us comments in. What are your thoughts about the service, the support service that you are currently receiving? What or were your expectations when you signed a service contract of some description? Or do you already have some kind of support contract? Or will you, or do you have a service level support contract? There is a fundamental difference there. So when we're looking at the types of service contracts and service level contracts, then there are different levels of service. And principally, we're talking about an on-call support service. We're talking about a call-out service. We're talking about a dedicated familiarization with the equipment, etc. Remote access is one, and you know, and I've already mentioned training, but the detailed training. So there's generic training and there's detailed training, and there's these there's 3 levels: level 1, level 2, and level 3. So let's just have a look at what those levels mean in terms of a support function. On-call, call-out is basically level 1. It's a hotline. It's a call center. And so we can phone a call center 24/7, regardless of where we are in the world. And then that call center will then manage to get a technician who is on call to call back on a telephone call or online within a time period. So that would be within whatever your direct on-call support contract would say. So you need to define that. If you cannot help, an OEM cannot help with the on-call service, then there is the call-out support service. The call-out support service is the more difficult to manage, depending on where we are in the world, of course. But of course, in today's day and age, like in this webinar, we're online using Zoom, you know, Teams, there's Google Meet. There are different ways that we can support. So this on-call support service, call-out support service has somewhat changed in more recent times. But that's a kind of a level 1. Level 2, when we go to, you know, when the first assessments, the first analysis hasn't identified the problem and we need to go a little bit deeper. And that's where potentially, you know, some using the remote access tooling that's available today, that kind of scenario. Or should we then build in some periodical visits so that we should be on site, you know, once a year, once every 6 months, once every 3 months, or whatever the cycle is that we decide is that, you know, that kind of support function. And coming back to the trainings and the audit, which are specialized training, so it's equipment training, generic training in terms of maintenance, etc. And training is done under nowadays, all training is done, well, certainly from my perspective, all training is done under the competency-based training and assessment guidelines that are provided by ICAO. And so there's been a lot of ad hoc training in the past, but it's now under a structure where we can impart knowledge, assess the skills with the human factor side. And that comes also by having regular audits, maintenance audits, etc., as part of a service level contract. So level 1, level 2, level 3. There's the criteria. Let's have a look at how we break that down into reality of tasks, you know. So level 1, level 2, level 3 here on the left-hand side of my presentation. And overall, it's about maintenance support, because after sales is fundamentally when that equipment is installed, has been commissioned, all set to work, it's been accepted, it's operating, and the airport is fundamentally operational. And so when we look at those modules, I'll just go through those again. The call center concept of having a hotline where that's a 24/7, so a dedicated call center. I mean, our call centers are available in all walks of life, but a call center that has the dedicated, you know, will say, for example, if they wanted to get in touch with TMS Training Solutions, a call center would say, answer and say, hello, you know, TMS Training Solutions, can I help you, etc., etc., etc. What's the problem, etc. Then we look at, you know, what kind of function do we supply as part of an on-call support function, whether it's just telephone assistance and etc. But it has to be done. The technician element, because of the global nature of the way we operate and the time zones, etc., then that has to be within a selected time. So different service level agreements have different time frames associated with response time from a call center, from the first time of the first call to a call center to getting the technician on standby to contact the airport on the ground. That has to be agreed. The second point, if that function doesn't work and we still have a problem, then there is the potential of call out. The call out service then has to be is clearly dependent on where we are in the world. If we're based locally, for example, if somebody wanted to call me out and it happens to be in the UK, my response time to get there on the ground is going to be shorter than if it's in Perth in Western Australia, for example. And that's pretty logical. However, when we're looking at that and we're looking at this on call, then in today's day and age, as I mentioned earlier, then with the communication platforms that's available to us today, maybe some of that call out can be done on over a platform or by remote access to the equipment. And that's the next step of saying, well, what remote access is available in supporting the engineer at the coal face on the ground. And then the fourth thing of back into competency, familiarization, etc. And there is looking at the different maintenance requirements in terms of operational needs. Then we are talking about, you know, what happens when something doesn't go wrong. Air traffic control are the operator of the AGL as a system. They have a human machine interface. They touch screen or mouse or press a button and they say, oh, it didn't come on. You know why it didn't come on? Ring ops, ring the engineers. Engineers then say, okay, I'll have a quick look. Oh, I need additional help. On call center. And then it goes through that process. And so alternatively, as part of a service support you may wish to outsource maintenance or some of the elements of the AGL. And when we look at AGL, AGL is a package. AGL is made up of three principal areas. We're talking about the control system. We're talking about the power, incoming power, and the control of the power, and the delivery of the power, and the delivery for the power for a 6.6 amp system is from a constant current regulator. And we know those technologies have changed. We know in the control system, which do the command and the back indication, they have changed. We have modern communication techniques. In the power, we've moved from thyristor-based to IGBT. We're communicating by data bus in some format or another, instead of hardwire. You know, those kind of scenarios exist. Then we go out to the field. The third thing is the lights in the field and the distribution system itself in the field. And then so that has changed things in more recent times from yesteryear. So those kind of elements have to be taken into the equation when we are looking about service. So what is level 1 maintenance service, support service? It's giving advice online, some very basic fault finding techniques. For example, we've got those 3 blocks of AGL. Those 3 blocks: power, controlled, and field. Then, if there's a problem, can we identify, is it a control system problem? Is it a power system problem? Is it a field related problem? Can we identify that relatively quickly with a telephone call support? Yes, we can. We can do that. Why? Because a CCR is capable of being operated in local control. It can work in short circuit. It's designed that way. So we can use that function to identify where the problem exists. Then we know which route to take for additional support, extra support, if we cannot find the defect ourselves. So that's the kind of level 1. The kind of things is cleaning. We find, okay, we have a problem. Maybe you've done a photometric check and we find that the lights are dim. Why are the lights dim? Well, maybe they need cleaning. So they could be they're part of a process of service, but etc. So a level 1 maintenance service is pretty low key, pretty basic initial considerations. Excuse me while I take a drink. All right. What is level 2? Well, level 2 is a little bit more in depth. Right, we've done the basic. Is it a control system? Is it the power side? Is it the field equipment? Then we go into the next stage to identify and break down the control or the CCR, incoming power, etc. So we go to a different level of, and therefore, when we go to a different level, more in-depth support, then clearly the technician who's available needs to have a little bit wider knowledge of the situation. So we will look at that separately. Level 3 is probably the highest level of maintenance that we would. So the diagnostic, maybe we've got diagnostic tools. Can we go online with diagnostic tools, etc.? Specifically when we're talking control systems, but it's most specific. But more information is being fed back if you're utilizing an asset management system, for example. So the choice of how you manage maintenance can assist you when you're looking at service support. So that's a key issue. So there's the 3 levels of maintenance. But when we look at those 3 levels of maintenance, we need persons who are capable of providing that support. So let's have a look at the competency and the skills associated with those 3 levels. Level one is pretty average, pretty general knowledge based of how the system works. Can we do those first line checks? The first line checks, you know, is it the control system? Is it the CCR? Is it the field circuit? Let's identify. Can we do that first? Because if somebody rings me and said, "Oh, I pressed a button and it didn't work, Keith, I need help." I said, "What have you done?" The first thing I would say is, right, now we'll go take ownership, go to from air traffic control, we go to the substation, switch room, vault room, call it what you like, where the CCRs are, and you go to the CCRs, and then you immediately switch the CCR to local control. Local control, that means you have ownership of that. You now controlling it. So the thing is, do the lights work out in the field in local control? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, etc. If it's a yes or a no, it's as simple as that. If the answer is no, then the problem is either in the CCR or out in the field. If the answer is yes, it works in local control, problem's in the control. Next step is say, well, does the CCR work in short circuit? So let's remove, we've now removed the control, remove the field circuit, is it working in short circuit? And we can do that simply by powering down safely and putting a piece of cable across the output, and it will work. Switch it on. Yes, it switches on. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Yes or a no. If the answer is yes, it works in local control, problems out in the field. And it's as straightforward. So we have some, level 1 is that kind of skill. Level 2 is when we need to start looking a little bit more in depth at the different, is it a control system problem? Is it in the PLC? Is it in the PLC, for example? Is it the human machine interface? Is it in the communication network? And is it hardwire, or is it data bus, control? We need to have a little bit more information, a little more depth of understanding of how the systems work. When it comes to the level 3, then it's a more specialized function. And so let's have a look at those 3 elements of AGL, and let's, each one of them, power, control, and the field, the distribution out in the field, each have their own peculiarities and needs as terms of service support. I have to say, control is the one which potentially needs most likely needs to have service support. And the reason I say that is because the reliability of control system technology today is very, very high, which means that potentially we don't need to touch it very often in terms of fault diagnosis. So our knowledge becomes diminished. So it's potentially better, maybe in that area, to have a support contract for the control side, as an example. And when we're looking at the AGL as a system, I'll just show this system. We are now in, it's not just a visual aid for visual flight rules. We're now, we operate our airfields as instrument, our runways as instrument runways, instrument facilities, and we link in now with the NavAid equipment, the radars, etc. As part of a surface movement guidance and an advanced surface movement guidance. And to do that, we introduce individual light control and monitoring. That in itself has developed one element that we used to be able to do, and still can, by the way, is that we can have a set of lights from one supplier, one particular supplier. We can have the ILCMS from another supplier. We can have the control system from another supplier. But when the technologies are starting to merge and come together, for example, you get a light fixture that has the ILCMS built in. Well, that directs towards single source procurement. A single source procurement then has its advantages, but it also has its disadvantages. I'm not going to go into and getting into a war of words with suppliers over this, but that's the reality. There are advantages for single source, there are disadvantages of single source, but that's the principle diagram of how a system works, utilizing ILCMS as part of an advanced service guidance, which is becoming the normal of today. So looking at those three elements of the AGL, the control, the power, and the lighting, then and we look at those four areas, then each have their own unique. So looking at this whole aspect of service, you need to ask yourselves, and I'll just say these are some of the questions when you're thinking about an after-sales service. You've got to consider some of these elements. Do you currently have the in-house knowledge to understand fully your systems within your own maintenance team? Are the staffing levels that you have and your competency and their competency justified or in date? Are they capable of providing a 24/7 support and rectification capability? So is a outsourced for support requirement or facility really needed? Do we already have respective tools and test equipment in-house? And are their calibrations up to date? Are they in date so we can use them for compliance testing? Do we have enough spares? Do we have our spare holdings? Are they sufficient? Would it be better maybe to outsource some packages, a bit like the control system, as I just mentioned earlier, as one function? What kind of support systems are available to you in your region? And for which part of the AGL technology, control, power, field, the lights themselves? Or do any of the service-related contracts that are on offer from OEMs actually fit your purpose? Oh, these are just some of the questions. So we do have service support contracts available in the industry, but some of them are just general service support contracts without any real detail, but others are service level contracts, service level agreements. And there is a fundamental difference between them. So if I take the control system as an example, I have just mentioned briefly, what I showed with this flowchart earlier, it doesn't change. It's there. They're the kind of, you need the call center, the call out support, the on-call support, the call out support, the detail support, etc., etc. And how it's managed is going to be different depending on where you are in the world, depending on your environment, in your traffic density, your hours of operating of your airport. Or you may even go down the route like some airports do and outsource it completely to a third party, your maintenance to a third party, and ensure that they have got their specialists available locally. But don't forget, I've just shown control, power, lighting, no different. The concepts are exactly the same. So if you look at it logically in the way I'm explaining it, then just maybe you will get the service level support contract that you actually need for your specific airport in your specific location. So to summarize, on-call support, call-out support, remote access capabilities to be used, the preventive maintenance element I just spoke about, and of course, training, familiarization, refresher training, continuation training, etc., in accordance with competency-based training and assessment guidelines, which is now defined via Annex 19 and via ICAO's various, and some of the regionals such as EASA in Europe defined exactly how we should be ensuring competency is assessed, is provided and assessed. So on-call support, let's have a look at a summary. It's questions and problems in a normal course of operation, on-call specialist, hopefully immediate response within a time frame, etc. So that's on-call support. The call-out support, as I mentioned, is a little bit more in depth, and it's going to take time. If you need a person on site, depending on where that specialist is, are they local, are they overseas, and it'll take time. So that has to be managed, but it has to be all defined in a service level contract. The proactive maintenance elements of scheduled visits. I mean, in a service contract, how many visits? Do I have one visit a year? Do I have one visit every 6 months? Do we have a visit every 3 months? You know, for example, that's the kind. What about updating, you know, like firmware, software of different, you know, the firmware in different components? You take a CCR. CCR has a control system, and that control system then has a set of criteria built into it for it to operate. So that's firmware, and the status of that firmware, is it out of date? I certainly know from my personal experiences with CCRs, I was changing firmware like getting a packet of opening a packet of Smarties sweets at one stage after the first introduction of a particular model, and that's the reality. Can it be done online? Can it be done through a teleservice of some description? There's those kind of situations. Remote access. Remote access in today's day and age, we do remote access. We collect data collection, data analysis, data presentation. So we can collect it. Excuse me. So that exists today. So available to us. So communication techniques globally, the world is a small place now. The world is a small place. And back to the CBTA type training, is that transfer of specialist know-how. So that really kind of summarizes into each have their own, just to remind you, we divide AGL into these 3 operational areas. We look at the 4 functions, the field in the equipment in the field, the test equipment, tools and test equipment that we use, the processes and procedures, and us, the people. They're the criteria, and that brings that all into one umbrella, I think, when we're talking about. So have we got questions? Because I think this will generate quite a lot of questions. So I think now it's now to bring the team back in, and let's have a discussion.
Thank you, Keith. If you can go back to the stop sharing, then we can get the panel back up.
Yes,
On the
okay.
screen. Thank you for very, very illuminating. There's it seems so innocuous when you say, you know, put up a slide saying after sales service. There's so much involved, and as you pointed out, it very much comes from the earlier stages of the cycle. It brought to mind the you know, when we're looking at people look at the price of products and services, and they very much look at the ticket price. You know, basically, if someone buys a product and service, they're looking to have something to solve a problem or to fulfill a need. But it's very much the focus is on the ticket price of the product or the service, so the light or the CCR, when in fact it's the total cost of ownership that really needs to be considered, which is everything, including the purchasing cost, which can involve a tender process. It's the price of the goods and or the service, of course, the actual ticket price. It's the cost of installation, not just the price of installation to a third party, but also the internal costs associated with installation. And the same for commissioning, including testing. Then the training of your staff and personnel to actually maintain the assets, use the assets in life, or the in-service costs associated with that product or service in life. So that's maintenance, repairs, recalibration if required, management of those assets. So that's an overhead, but someone's got to manage it all. As you say, Keith, you can't manage what you don't measure. So you need to have the metrics in place to actually measure the performance of that asset and when the maintenance is required and what the costs associated with that are. And of course, any support contract you engage with a third party as part of that process. And then finally, of course, there's a decommissioning cost. Fortunately, we're not in the nuclear industry, but when people looked at nuclear energy, I've been shocked recently when you hear about the cost of decommissioning a nuclear plant. I mean, in some cases, it can be absolutely massive. And as quite rightly, environmental considerations are coming to the fore, certain assets need to be disposed of safely when they come to the end of life. And all of this is considered part of the total cost of ownership. So yeah, very interesting, Keith. Really appreciate that.
I think one of the aspect, Robert, is the geographical location. We have the authorities, the different authorities, that is obviously ICAO from an international viewpoint, but we have our regional authorities, and then we have our national authorities. And when we're looking at that whole element, the key issue is when we have a project, and I think Tony, we had a little discussion, earlier today, for everyone to, we had this little bit of a discussion earlier, and Seward has reiterated that from the American, the US viewpoint, is that element associated with the difference between the project teams and the maintenance teams, and that, that disjointed, which I mentioned earlier, that disjointed approach, because that really does affect, how much service support is needed by the maintenance teams. And it's very close to both Seward and Tony's heart. You've got some comments on this, maybe, you guys.
Well, I can make a couple of comments here, Keith. That was an excellent presentation, a great overall view of the whole subject. And I could spend time going into individual elements, but I'm thinking of it's so important of the competency of the user of the equipment. I'm talking about the airport maintenance people. Having competency of knowing what the equipment does, the value of the equipment, and how do I service it? How do I ensure that it's maintained to the levels that it's designed for? And in this process of educating the people at the airport, the maintenance people, goes back to when we have over here in the country, we'd have a design engineering team that would say, okay, this airport is going to operate under low visibility conditions. A Cat 3 airport, it's going to have certain types of equipment, certain capabilities. And so what is going to be needed? Now, this design team can be completely isolated from the airport personnel, the maintenance people. They design it and they put out project plans and specifications, which goes out to people who are going to install the system. but most times there's very little communication between the design people and the people that are going to have to maintain the system. Unfortunately, we have a few great designers in this country, one being Carl Johnson, who's not here today, who they have a familiarity with the airport people. They're there prior to project. They're there to see need. They're there to listen to the customer. And that all goes into the design. And when the design is being done and finalized, the airport people are involved. And so they play a role in that, and they appreciate the product, the capabilities of their system much more if they're involved in the beginning and know really what they're dealing with. And so I could go on in that area for quite a while, but it's just so important. And we see once we get the systems in, we have the manufacturers come in and explain their use, their function. And many times, as I alluded to in our previous conversation, they come in and maybe a control system or maybe a lighting system. The experts supposedly come in and talk to the airport of how this is supposed to operate and how to maintain it. But they talk to 2 or 3 people at the airport, which are the management supervisors or managers. The people that need to be interested in this don't get to talk to them. The people that have to maintain it and should be excited about the equipment they have there installed at their airport, which makes them better maintenance people if they're excited about it and take an ownership in it. They don't get involved in some of these preliminary conversations and installations. So they think, oh, well, they know it. So the managers try to then come down and try to explain it to the workers. And you know how the message changes when you go from one level to another level. By the time it gets down to the worker level, a lot of the maybe key points are left out. But it's got to, you got to get the people interested and want to do that. And of course, part of it is the training we do to make sure they understand how the equipment is supposed to perform and how it's supposed to be maintained. And on a yearly basis here at the Part 139 airports here, we'll have an inspection. The FAA will come in and inspect the airport, look at the various systems and certify the airport as proper for use. Well, the people that do the inspection, the FAA people got to know what they're talking about. You just don't come into an airport, and I can give you personal examples of this. You come to an airport and say, okay, let's check your runway lighting. So you go to the vault, you check step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you look out the door, it's all working, that's fine. On to the next subject. And those are the types of things that we need interested people at the airport to help ensure that the proper testing is done. And the FAA's got to be trained to do the proper testing that's done. The inspectors have to. And I must admit that some things they're good at and some things they don't understand. And a lot of it involves the lighting aspects. Okay, so I could go on, but the importance is that people, you like what you do, you got to give people to like what they do and then and enjoy doing it. And that way you'll see that it's much more properly serviced. And that's important. I'll stop there for a minute.
No, I think it's you're absolutely spot on there, Seward. It touches on very much. I have a question which is more of a comment from Ilya, who I believe is based in Canada. He says, knowing how the world is functioning in the dynamics of the open market creates a deep shake in our business sphere. I think we have fundamental problems that we have incompetent people in key positions. Well, this is the issue is I raised the issue of sales managers unqualified for our business, and other problem is the production line is currently facing delays and obstacles in maintenance and planning. Which obviously relates to specific experience. I don't know what it is, but the frustration here is examples of the airports. He says that airports reducing category of operations due to inadequate products for the geographic specifics. And he says he's come across this in his experience of working in the world. And it comes down to this issue of competence, which Keith has talked about specifically time and time again. And ICAO is addressing by a specific structure. But for your airports, you need to have requirements, as Keith put in his presentation. Those need to be, you need to do due diligence on the offerings that you're actually considering. Bearing in mind that the people that are actually selling to you are not the people that will be delivering to you. So you need to know that those people are absolutely competent, and they need to be contracted to deliver those requirements in a way that is that you are going to get what you actually expect, because otherwise you will have problems, and we see this over and over again. And if it isn't compliant, and if it isn't safe when it's installed, it's never gonna be safe or compliant. And the only way it's going to change is at your cost. So that's the brutal reality of it. One of the other comments I've got here is, and possibly Keith, are there any generic requirements documents out there available for airfield lighting products and services that airports could use, could take on board to help them actually get it right?
Well, there has been several documents that have been produced associated with answering that question. But when we look at the standards documents, and we know very well at this moment of time that, and let's take in Seward's world, the advisory circulars associated from the FAA, the two principal documents there is in the 150 series is the design advisory circular and the maintenance advisory circular. And that we know in this present era, the maintenance advisory circular is somewhat well out of date, isn't it, Seward?
Yeah.
And I know that it's very close to your heart, that subject at this moment of time. And when we look at other areas, and we're based in Europe, so we have the geographical area of Europe. So in the geographical area of Europe, we have now EASA, and EASA are producing a whole range of legal documents, which is approved and issued under European law. So those documents are available, in terms of standards and recommended practices. But bringing Tony into the equation, the standards and the recommended practices from ICAO, it takes an eternity to get those documents produced and reissued. And I certainly know that you have certain recommendations and discussions currently associated with the PAPI, just the PAPI as a system, never mind all the rest of the visual aids. Haven't you, Tony?
Yeah, Tony, in terms of following up what Keith's saying there, the annexes, as we know, contain the internationally approved standards, the SARPs, standards of recommended practice, and recommended practices. But in the aerodrome design manual, that contains advice on how to achieve compliance with the statements and recommended practices. How adequate do you think they are for our industry now, based on what you're seeing?
Well, I think like a lot of things, they're drifting more and more out of date in their advice. They're talking about equipment which are, the power supply systems, less and less seeing it exactly like that. It's talking about technologies basically that have their origins in the 1940s in some cases. And I was looking the other day at the latest version of the ADM Part 4 in relation to PAPI. And when I look at that, what's happened in recent years, they've taken out what was in the early editions when PAPI was first introduced, quite a lot of good background information as to how you might be able, if you have concerns about your PAPI, to check whether it is compliant in its basic performance. and that's no longer in the document. And then I saw Seward send me a copy of it, one of the documents that Keith was talking about, the maintenance document. You know, be very specific about the PAPI. There's a section there talking about tolerances for the setting angles. Now, ICAO talks about an overall 3 minutes of arc or better, which is what we achieved for the setting angles in our design work and what we recommended to ICAO. But alongside the ICAO requirements, there's another column which says you can have a tolerance of 6 minutes of arc. Well, that's an absolute nonsense, because once you've done that, you haven't got a PAPI. Because there are 20-minute increments between the sectors. If you've got 6 minutes of variability allowed there, you can finish up with a very ragged system and a very substandard set. Now, I don't know who put that column in there, but they clearly didn't understand the basics of PAPI by putting it in there at all.
Well, if you have that increased tolerance, Tony, ultimately, if you are at the bottom end of that, you know, sorry, the top end of that tolerance, so you are 6 minutes out, you know, fundamentally, and if you are talking about 6 minutes low, flying in low, your wheels are going to be dramatically lower to the ground and it crosses the threshold.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's dangerous. I would say potentially dangerous. Whoever put that column in, I would like to know how they justify putting that column in there at all.
Yeah.
I can only think, you know, frankly, they don't understand how the PAPI system works. They don't have any knowledge. This is just some bureaucrat saying, oh, well, you know, in practice, we'll just double that. That sounds all right. Nothing to worry about.
And I think that comes back to the comments that Ila raised about the different functions and the different time, you know, when we're looking at, because this subject is about after sales service, but when we're looking at service, you've got to get all the things correct prior to that operational phase. And that starts, as Seward quite rightly says, with design, at the fundamental, right at the beginning, and design, you know, manufacture, you know, factory acceptance. I mean, for example, I was present at a factory acceptance for a project in, I'm not going to go to the country, it wouldn't be the right thing to say, but I was at, and the team that came to accept said to me, no, we can't accept this piece of equipment. And it was a CCR. And I said, why? And I said, well, we don't know where the oil cooling is. I said, pardon? I don't, where's the, where do we fill the oil for the oil cooling? And I said, this is not that generation. So the project documentation right at the beginning was so old, you know, in the 1940s, 50s, 60s era, you know, and we're now we're well into the 2000s, you know. So which is basically what you know, both of you has said, you know, that both you know, that you've got to get the documentation right, and it's right at the beginning. So you know, so coming back to the after sales part, if you don't get all the early things correct, the poor old maintenance guys haven't got a hope in hell, have they?
No, you're quite right. So yes, I think it's I think you've hit a very important topic here. And, you know, so following on from this, in the next webinar, we're going to be looking at, in part 2, the specifics as they relate to lighting. We're going to be looking at the maintenance life cycle, including calibration. You there, Keith?
Yes,
Right.
yes.
We'll be looking at the
And
maintenance
what I'm
life
going to do,
cycle.
look, is to open up that from the current day, and there we are.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're looking at the maintenance life cycle, including calibration where required, specifically at Airfield, visual aids. So that's the ground lighting, which is approach, runway, and taxiway. We'll be looking at the as maintenance life cycle as it relates to signs, to PAPIs, and to flood lighting. So we're getting into the real meat and vegetables of the topic. So we're very much looking to do that. There was one other question we had here, which we'll finish off with. And Keith Seward, if you could, and how does the FAA, what does it mandate in relation to Part 139 for maintenance of Part 139 funded purchases? What are the requirements there?
Well, for buying new equipment, you're talking about?
Yes.
Well, the FAA has a advisory circular which details the performance requirement of each piece of equipment that you buy that is funded by the FAA, and that's 95% of all the equipment you see at a Part 139 airport. So it's very specific, and it's very specific test procedures the manufacturer has to go through in order for his product to be certified and put on the market to be used at these airports. And so it's very detailed and it's very helpful. And I think most manufacturers comply with that, and they have to comply with it if their equipment is going to be purchased or used at an airport. And I think that's one of our strengths here in that process, is that we have qualified people inspecting products to make sure they're okay before they start to market them. But that doesn't guarantee necessarily when the product is shipped later on from the factory that it's going to be the same product, unless you have at the factory a team which is qualified to do that inspection. You have photometric test equipment that checks the photometrics and so forth. So it's a continuous process down through the whole installation process that has to meet standards, and the standards have to be understood by the manufacturer. They have to be understood by the airport who's installing them and going to maintain them. Does that start to answer your question, Robert?
Yes, so that certainly helps US purchasers, but of course in the US, as you said, uniquely airports are able to take advantage of this 90 or 95% passenger fund levy when they purchase qualifying equipment.
I think it's closer to about 90%, but
No.
it varies a little bit on the facility, but I'd say 90%.
So right, so 90% of projects can potentially be funded by the passenger fund levy, but the requirement, as I understand it, is that from you is that the anything purchased using these monies must be then maintained in accordance with the laid down requirements. That's a condition of purchase.
Well, the condition of purchase is that you get the proper equipment, and they also want you to maintain it. Yes, and as I alluded to earlier, when the people come out to inspect it every year after that, you got to make sure the inspectors know what they're talking about, which I gave an example where they didn't, and the airport has got to know enough about what the requirements are in order to maintain it so that it will be accepted when you have a qualified inspector.
Right. So thank you for that.
Robert, can I just interrupt you before you close down? I think we just amongst ourselves earlier, you were going to mention with the possibility still people could put questions on today. The question, is there anything else you'd like us to do a webinar on? Yes.
So thank you, Tony. Yes, so very much. We can you please, using we have a questionnaire that is sent to you after this webinar. Please respond to us, and including very important question as to what would you like us to present in these webinars? What subject matter, what questions would you like answered? You've got a fantastic panel. I'm very fortunate with the panel we have here that knows so much about everything to do with our industry. And so please utilize the opportunity. Let us know what you would like us specifically to address in our webinars, and we will do our absolute best to accommodate you. So thank you very much, Keith. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Seward. Thank you again, Felicity and Damon, who've been supporting us in the logistics and background in making this all happen. We really I appreciate everything you do. We're looking very much forward to our next webinar, where we're diving into the detail of AGL service and support, specifically looking at the life cycles, at the maintenance life cycles, and of the key visual aid assets, which are your airfield lights, your signs, your PAPIs, and your floodlighting. So we'll be back with you on Tuesday, the 25th of July at 2 o'clock at UK time, 3 o'clock European time, or whatever your time may be. There will be a recording posted of this webinar by tomorrow on our tmstrainingsolutions.com website. So you can watch it back, or you can show it to your colleagues if they've missed it. And we look forward to seeing you all again at the same time, 25th of July, on AGL Service Support Part 2. Thank you very much for your participation and support. We really appreciate it. Goodbye.
Ciao.
Cheers.
Bye.
Ciao.